Canada uh, and America. Today is election day in Canada. And as we look at Trump's polling numbers, which we will do in a moment, we're going to see too that he's having an effect north of the border. So you have Pierre Poilievre, who is a conservative candidate, and Mark Carney, who's a liberal candidate. The Liberals are the party of Justin Trudeau. He resigned. He made Carney became the prime minister, and then they called an election. And the Liberals in Canada over the past couple of years have been in terrible shape. Their policies were not working for Canadians, enough Canadians. That Trudeau as the head, they grew tired of him. They were up by about 20 points, and this election was meant to be a slam dunk until what happened, Gary?
Well, Michael, you hit the nail on the head. It's being said in Canada today that this election is all about somebody who's not on the ballot.
Yeah.
Suscitated in terms of its efficacy by taking on Trump. I mean, they like you said. I mean, he was really kind of going down in flames pre-Trump's election, and then it's truly been remarkable to see that polling on Trump in Canada tracks probably more accurately than anything else with what's going on up there politically speaking. And he's made it that way. Everybody, including myself, still scratching your head about why you would come out of the gate taking on Canada of all places. I mean, okay, China, we could understand, a lot of other places. Canada? But in any event, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes today, Michael, in terms of their vote. And then, quickly on the 100 days, you may get into this in more detail. I mean, the postmortems are already being written on the first 100 days. But one thing you can certainly say, there's been no grass growing under his feet and this administration's feet. And the question right now becomes, when you guys have guys like J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, in New Hampshire already over the weekend, I mean, people in the Democratic Party are clearly already focused very firmly on the midterms and even 28.
Yeah, there's no question. Not only that, Pritzker was there and he was criticizing his own party, which is basically saying, I'm running for president without saying I'm running for president. And we can get to that a little bit later too. Yeah, you and I are both political geeks. First 100 days, typically known as the honeymoon, right? There was no honeymoon for this president.
Well, there was a honeymoon for him and his own party. What do I mean by that? If you talk to the hardcore Trump base, they're happy that and I hear this from Trump supporters all the time. Well, he's at least he's doing what he said he was going to do, right? That's what they're happy about. One of the big frustrations in the conservative wing of the Republican Party, as you know, Michael, over many years now, has been, well, we elect these guys and gals to Congress and even the White House, but then they get in there and then they don't do anything. At least the things that they told us and promised us they were going to do. So I would say if there's a honeymoon, it's been with that side of the political spectrum. Certainly not with any others.
Yeah, that's true. I'm glad you pointed that out too, Gary, because that honeymoon has endured now for a decade. He's unusual as a political figure in that nothing he does, even if his policy impacts those people in a negative way, somehow they stick with him, which is a very sort of difficult political scientist thing to attack, but it's a great benefit to the president, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you'll hear these same Trump folks say things like, well, because I will ask, I'll start drilling down a little bit. Well, what do you think about this specific kind of tariff on, your industry or whatever? Or what do you think about potential cuts in Medicaid, Medicare? What? And they say, well, it's the long term. He's got the game, and I'm like, well, hey, long term, you guys better be a little careful about 18 months from now, because November of next year, if you lose control of that House, it's game over. I mean, everybody in Washington knows that. If you have lost control of the House, whereas Michael, all fiscal measures start and typically die, got to have it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I say, you better hope that in the next 18 months, these things aren't taking too long term for people to feel good about.
Yeah, it's really true. And this is a president who came into office it could be argued, on the economy, on the price of eggs, basically, and dumbing it down. And now he has the lowest 100-day job approval, according to an ABC News poll, of any president in the past 80 years. And that is, that's not where he expects to be. He's someone who loves to be loved. And when he, on the economy since Trump took office, the numbers are we better off? 21% say yes. Are we worse? 53% say we're worse off. Prices for things you want or need are going up, say 62% of Americans. 11% say they're going down. And you have to think there's a MAGA crowd that just wants to answer that question in the affirmative for the president. And then the 72% of Americans think that were polled in this ABC poll, the likelihood of Trump's policies causing a recession, 72% of Americans say that. So you're talking about the economy. And I should say this was an ABC Ipsos poll. Ipsos is the polling firm there. And so they, these numbers do not say good things about an economy, which is what midterm elections are often based on.
Yeah, well, as you know, Michael, there's one place where Trump remains above water in polling, and that's on immigration more broadly. You know,
Yeah.
and so that is why for example, you are going to see tomorrow on the 100th-day anniversary a lot of talk about immigration, okay? Because that's the strong suit. As far as the other stuff that you point out, the economy, I have been saying for a long time, even to my Trump supporting, associates and all, I say, listen, I don't get from just a pure political strategic point of view. If you want to do Doge, why not do it after the midterms? Okay. I mean, because nobody was, as far as I know, there was not a lot of polling saying we've got to start slashing and burning the federal government, right? That it was all about what you pointed out. Like people were talking about, we know the top two issues. They were the economy, mainly inflation, and immigration. That was it. He's still fairly strong in his numbers on immigration, but the economic numbers are not good. And people are hopeful, in his administration that this tariff battle somehow by the middle of the summer gets sort of sorted out, and all these multitude of agreements are reached between different nations. And China is not threatening, to keep ships off our shores for the next decade. I mean, it's like something's got to give in the next few months. But I just don't understand from a pure strategic political point of view why you would take on tariffs and Doge as opposed to, the immigration, which he is doing, and the economy. The
Yeah.
economy sort of stepchild to me that's been left out.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's almost like how do those the New York Times has these travel pieces, 36 hours in Lisbon, right? And it's almost like it was like he read 36 hours in presidenting, and he tried to do everything at once and cause all this chaos. And now that a little bit of dust is settling, this is where you find yourself as president, with these really difficult situations. And then there are other distractions. And look at to move away from Trump's polling for just a moment. He was at Pope Francis's funeral in the Vatican this weekend. It took a 14-hour trip over there, and then he met with Zelensky on two what look like rental chairs in the middle of St. Peter's Basilica, and he said that he wants a peace deal. But what do you? This seems like it's almost a haphazard bit of diplomacy here, and I wonder if that's affecting. I know immigration is going down as being as important to voters as the economy is. Where do you think this fits in?
Well, I think I'm going to say sadly, let me touch on one other one real quick. The whole Israel Gaza thing is almost off the political radar screen. I mean, it's amazing to me that it has nearly disappeared in one sense. So let's shift to Russia, Ukraine. You know how it's going right now, Michael. It depends on the week who Trump's upset with. I mean,
Right.
one week it's Zelensky, and now all of a sudden, with Putin launching these crazy attacks in Kyiv and things like that last week, now he's threatening Putin again. And I think, the missed opportunity to me in this whole thing was, unfortunately, when that mineral deal, just from a pure geopolitical point of view, to say what you want about, exploiting the Ukrainians on minerals, so forth. But geopolitically, not signing that mineral deal, which would have locked in American interests on Ukrainian soil. And Trump will refer to this every once in a while. But if you want to stop the Russians, the most effective way to do it is put American economic interests in the way of the tanks, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you have American mining companies and American, contractors, I'm just saying from a purely strategic point of view, that's how you keep Putin from taking the country over, because you ain't taking over the major American mining companies.
Right.
Okay, that's how you do it. And
Right.
I'm perplexed why that deal, which they keep saying every week, "Oh, we're almost there, we're almost there." Why don't they get the thing signed? I can't figure that out.
Yeah, look, there's so much we can't figure out because the posture of the administration is so difficult to pin down. As we were just talking about on tariffs and the flip flopping on tariffs, on doing it, the timing of when they did these tariffs and when they, as you mentioned, going after Canada, even rhetorically, but actually with tariffs. So there's so many things that you question, that at a certain point, it is incumbent upon the administration and the president to kind of, sweep things into a neat pile, and they seem unable to do it because of all the fires they started at the beginning of these 100 days, and at the very, very beginning, day one, when that was the day that he said that he would be okay being a dictator, but that was just day one.
If you want to give some kudos out, I think you're starting to be a consensus that if you're trying to find a few rock solid places, or at least places of stability in the administration, you got to look to a guy like Marco Rubio. Now, say what you want about, he's going along with USAID cuts and everything else, but this is a guy who, as you know, Michael, was almost unanimously voted in by the U.S. Senate, confirmed.
It was 99 nothing, 99 to
Yeah,
0. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the other person was on a bathroom break or whatever, but the
Might have been
bottom
Rubio.
Yeah, it was Rubio.
Actually.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I should vote for myself. That would look self-serving. So
Right.
the point of the matter is, Rubio is kind of holding things together to some large degree with a lot of these major hotspots around the world. And when crazy stuff is said, he will show up on the Sunday shows and present some pretty cogent arguments for things like strategic control of the Panama Canal, whether or not we take it back or whatever, but making sure that we have firm access to that choke point, militarily. So there's some things like that. So I would say, you point to a Rubio, it's hard to find a lot of others, but those are some of the, thank goodness from a geopolitical standpoint that he chose a Marco Rubio who knows how to speak the language of foreign diplomats, and importantly knows how to speak the language of Congress. Because here's one interesting thing to me. Nobody, there's no big loud voices in the Congress taking on Rubio. You're not hearing senators come out and chastise him like there are a lot of the other folks, RFK and others. And so, Trump has to be glad that he selected Marco Rubio, as upset as the international chessboard is these days.
Yeah, I suppose. I know there are a lot of people that would look at Rubio as saying, fine, but still not good enough. And a lot of people are hanging their hats on USAID and how he didn't fight back. That there is not a team of, he's not a rival, and there's not a team of rivals there. But I hear what you're saying, and it's true, because there's certainly more reasonableness from the Department of State than we've seen from certainly the other departments that we've talked about, and of course, defense. And the more that you hear about Hegseth, the better Rubio looks as well. We only have you for a couple more minutes, so let's just talk about politics. Like we talked about Pritzker. An interesting thing here is I want to talk about Gavin Newsom, and I want to talk about Jerry Connolly. We'll start with Jerry Connolly, a congressman from Virginia, who's been in Congress for nearly 3 decades. He has esophageal cancer. He's the ranking member on the Oversight Committee. He was one of those veterans that was able to be elected by his committee. The person who was going to run against him was Representative Ocasio-Cortez. Now, do we see, now that he says he's not going to run, he's going to step down from that committee as the ranking member, do you see this as portending some sort of national political story with Representative Ocasio-Cortez getting a space in leadership?
Well, I'll tell you, I was at her rally right here in California with Bernie, a week or so ago, 10 days ago, and she's on her way up. And the thing about it is, I'll tell you what, Michael, when I went to that rally, 25,000 people in Folsom, California, which, by the way, represented by a very conservative member of Congress
Yeah.
who they named personally, both of them. You know, they are getting the attention, and I think she has nothing but upside right now. Let's put it that way. Nobody else in her party is attracting those kind of non-election year rally crowds. Nobody is, and so I think that's part of it. The other thing is you see, number two guy, Dick Durbin in the Senate, as you know, saying he's retiring. I mean, I think there's been this call inside the Democratic Party for a quote unquote new generation of leadership. I think we're starting to see it before our own eyes.
Yeah, and I think Chuck Schumer's looking in his periphery as well at some of what's going on. Gavin Newsom, and this is the last question for you because I know you do have to go. So he lit into the president and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., over the cuts to the suicide hotline. What do you make of this? And is there a sense? And I love politics, so politicians have to play politics. Is there a sense that he's trying to chime in on a lot of issues so that he can stay relevant in the conversation nationally?
Well, yeah, because as you know, Michael, he's been taking a lot of hits in the last few months. When he was the first governor to go into the Oval Office and meet with Trump, he, of course, met with Trump on the tarmac here in the fires, beginning of the year. He's got $40 billion request into the White House and into Congress for aid to get that fire assistance moving. That has not passed Congress. He's got to have that, to have the resources necessary to rebuild a city and a region that's going to be hosting the Olympics, for goodness sake. The entire world's going to be here in 3 years. So Gavin Newsom is really in a rough place politically. He's got to have the support of the Trump administration on the one hand, but on the other, he's doing things like filing the first state lawsuit questioning whether Trump actually has the executive power to actually enact tariffs, whether that's not actually a congressional power. So, he's wading through a real minefield right now. That is Gavin Newsom. And while other governors like Pritzker and others are already making their move on 28.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So, Gary, thank you so much for being with us today. I love talking to you, and we're kindred spirits on this thing. So, I love talking about what we just talked about. So, we got to let you go. We appreciate you being here, and Mark will be back here next Monday talking to you from this seat.
Okay, well, have a great rest of the show, Michael.
Yeah, of course. Gary Dietrich's segment is sponsored by Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. If you're relocating into or from Northern California, you need a highly respected real estate professional like Bill Campbell of Remax Gold. Call or text Bill at 530-448-7474. That's 530-448-7474.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.